I never meant to notice her, but the way she looked at me changed everything. The day he first noticed her was ordinary, but something in the air made it feel different. He, a 24-year-old quietly observant young man, had gone over to his friend's house to drop off some textbooks. He hadn't expected to see her, the woman everyone spoke of in passing, his friend's mother, in the warm glow of the afternoon. She was in the kitchen, moving with a calm grace that immediately drew his attention. There was a quiet confidence in the way she carried herself, a softness in her posture that hinted at a life full of stories he could never guess. She glanced up, her eyes catching his as if she'd known he was there the whole time. A small smile tugged at her lips, teasing but subtle. He felt the familiar rush of awkwardness mixed with curiosity, a heady cocktail that made him shift uncomfortably, aware of how much he was staring. And yet, he couldn't look away. She offered him a cup of tea, her fingers brushing his for the briefest moment. That touch, fleeting as it was, left a warmth lingering along his arm, sending a shiver through him he didn't quite understand. Her scent, something like vanilla and soft floral notes, floated in the air, comforting yet intoxicating. He tried to focus on the mundane, the steam rising from the cup, the hum of the refrigerator, the gentle clink of the spoon against porcelain. But every detail of her, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the subtle arch of her brow, pulled his attention back to her. She spoke, her voice warm and lilting, commenting on something simple, the weather, a dish he had brought, a trivial anecdote about her day. Yet even in casual conversation, there was a teasing undercurrent, a knowingness in the way she looked at him that made his chest tighten. He stumbled over his words, aware of the color rising to his cheeks. She noticed, of course, and her smile deepened, playful but not mocking. He caught himself stealing glances while she moved around the kitchen, unconsciously tracing the curve of her movements with his eyes. She paused, pretending to adjust a cup on the counter, and met his gaze. There was a silent acknowledgement there, a spark that didn't need words. It was both exhilarating and forbidden, and he felt the weight of it pressing gently on him, teasing his imagination. Inside, he wrestled with his thoughts. She's my friend's mom. I shouldn't be noticing her like this. But alongside the hesitation was an undeniable pull, a curiosity he couldn't ignore. His senses seemed heightened, the softness of her laugh, the warmth radiating from her presence, the quiet elegance in her every motion. Every little gesture, intentional or not, seemed to speak directly to him. By the time he left, he was acutely aware of the moment's significance. A simple interaction, ordinary in any other circumstance, had become something charged, electric. The memory of her smile, her voice, the fleeting brush of her hand lingered long after he stepped out the door. It was a subtle, unspoken beginning, a seed of connection planted in silence, waiting to grow. Emotional beat for YouTube script, open with introspection and sensory immersion. Show viewers through his perspective, awkwardness, curiosity, and wonder, rather than explicit attraction. Set the tone for slow burn tension, everyday life made extraordinary by a glance, a touch, a fleeting smile. This is the hook that draws audiences into the emotional world of the narrator. After that first unexpected spark, every visit to his friend's house began to feel charged, as though the air itself had shifted. He couldn't help but notice her in ways he hadn't imagined possible, his friend's mother, poised and effortlessly captivating, yet quietly approachable. There was something magnetic about her presence, subtle and natural, that made ordinary moments feel heavier, richer, more alive. It started with small gestures. At dinner, she would place a plate in front of him with a careful precision, fingers brushing his hand ever so lightly. In the brief contact, warmth surged through him, not a shocking flame, but a steady, undeniable pull. Her eyes lingered a fraction too long when he made a joke, her laughter carrying a soft, melodic lilt that left him momentarily breathless. He found himself watching her as she moved around the room, noting the way her posture hinted at confidence, yet softened when she smiled at him. Each glance she offered felt deliberate, teasing, yet carefully restrained. He caught himself stealing moments of observation he couldn't explain. How she tucked her hair behind her ear when deep in thought, the faint curve of her lips when she smiled to herself, the subtle tilt of her head when she listened intently. It was like discovering a language he hadn't known existed, one spoken entirely through gestures and quiet glances. Every day, his awareness of her grew sharper, his curiosity more insistent, and yet, he felt the pull of restraint. "She's my friend's mom," he reminded himself, but the thought did little to quell the fluttering in his chest. She seemed to sense it, too, in the way she would catch him looking and allow a teasing smirk to curl her lips. Sometimes, she would brush past him in the hallway or reach across the counter, the brief touch lingering longer than necessary. In those moments, their eyes would meet, and a silent conversation would unfold, something playful, something charged with unspoken acknowledgement. His pulse quickened at each fleeting connection, and he realized he was learning to read her moods, her subtle cues, with an almost obsessive attentiveness. It wasn't just attraction, it was fascination, a desire to understand her, the person beneath the poised exterior. He noticed the little vulnerabilities, too, the way her brow creased slightly when she thought he wasn't watching, the softness in her eyes when she laughed at a personal memory. It drew him in even further, building a tension that was both thrilling and perplexing. Even mundane tasks became moments of quiet intensity. When she handed him a towel, when she leaned over to show him something on the counter, when she passed by him in the living room, he felt the subtle heat of proximity, the quiet resonance of a shared space. Their connection remained unspoken, simmering beneath the surface, yet each interaction layered on more depth, more subtle longing. Emotional beat for YouTube script. This is the part where tension thickens without a word spoken. The audience should feel the electricity in every glance, every accidental touch, every quiet laugh. Show the narrator's internal struggle, captivated yet hesitant, aware of social boundaries but unable to ignore the pull. Build anticipation slowly. The attraction is undeniable, but still restrained, laying the foundation for playful flirtation in the next chapter. By now, their interactions had taken on a new rhythm, subtle, charged, and slightly mischievous. What had started as quiet fascination and lingering glances had begun to evolve into playful teasing. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that would have gone unnoticed in any other household. But here, in the warmth of a sunlit kitchen, something shifted. He was doing the dishes, hands damp and soapy, when she leaned against the counter nearby. Her presence was a quiet force, graceful and relaxed, yet impossible to ignore. She tilted her head slightly, eyes locking with his, and a small, knowing smile curved her lips. "You keep staring," she said softly, almost teasing. "Care to do more than that?" The words hit him like a spark in dry grass. He froze mid-motion, feeling the warmth rush to his face. Part of him wanted to laugh nervously, part of him wanted to deny it, and yet, something inside him thrilled at the challenge she had thrown. There was a lightness in the way she said it, not accusing, not vulgar, but playful and curious. It invited him to respond, but without pressuring him, letting him navigate the moment. He stumbled over his words, mumbling a reply that barely made sense. She chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to linger in the air longer than it should. Her eyes danced with amusement, and he realized she had been aware of his attention all along. Every glance he had thought discreet, every hesitation he had tried to mask, she had seen. And now, she was acknowledging it, leaning into the tension instead of shying away. Their playful banter continued in small ways. She would lightly brush his arm when reaching past him, lean a little closer to whisper instructions, or make teasing remarks about his habits. Each interaction was layered with meaning, subtle but electric. For him, the challenge wasn't just about attraction, it was about learning to navigate her world, to understand the boundaries, and to appreciate the humor in the situation. He noticed details in a new way. The curve of her smile when she caught him looking, the flicker of amusement in her eyes, the way her voice seemed warmer when she spoke to him than anyone else. These small moments, repeated, began to build a rhythm of anticipation. He found himself looking forward to her presence more than he expected, wondering what small spark she would ignite next. At the same time, he wrestled with hesitation. His mind kept reminding him that she was his friend's mother, that boundaries existed for a reason. Yet, the playful tension between them was undeniable. He began to realize that attraction wasn't always loud or obvious, sometimes, it whispered through subtle touches, teasing remarks, and lingering looks. And in this slow dance, both of them were learning, testing, and discovering a connection neither fully understood yet, but both clearly felt. Emotional beat for YouTube script. This chapter is where the tension becomes playful. Show the audience that the attraction is mutual, but restrained through humor and subtle gestures. Use sensory details, touch, laughter, glances, to make the chemistry tangible. Emphasize the narrator's mix of excitement, embarrassment, and curiosity, building anticipation for deeper emotional intimacy in the next part. Tea started as an ordinary moment, one that could have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but for him, it became unforgettable. He was helping her carry groceries from the car to the kitchen. The sun was low, casting a warm, golden light through the window, and the quiet hum of the neighborhood seeped in through the open door. She handed him a bag with a smile, and their fingers brushed again, longer than necessary. The warmth of her touch lingered, sending a jolt up his arm that made his heart thump in ways he wasn't ready to admit. As they arranged the groceries on the counter, he noticed how natural and fluid her movements were. She leaned slightly over the counter to place a jar of pasta sauce, her shoulder brushing his. A small laugh escaped her lips as she noticed him flinch, and he felt both embarrassed and exhilarated. There was no malice, no intention beyond casual closeness, but in that moment, the ordinary became charged with electricity. Later, as they cleaned up, she reached over to adjust the hem of his sleeve, smoothing a crease he hadn't noticed. Her hand lingered just a second longer than necessary on his wrist. He caught himself staring at the way her fingers moved with such precision and care, noting the subtle warmth and softness of her skin. He realized he was noticing details he never would have before, the faint scent of her perfume, the gentle curve of her cheek as she tilted her head, the softness in her eyes when she laughed at his clumsy attempt to help. There was a vulnerability to her, too, that he hadn't seen before. When she paused to sip her tea, her expression softened, and he glimpsed a side of her that was quiet, introspective, almost wistful. It wasn't obvious or dramatic, just a fleeting moment of honesty that made him feel closer to her than ever. For the first time, he began to understand her beyond the teasing smiles and playful remarks. She wasn't just confident and alluring, she was human, layered with experiences and emotions that made her profoundly real to him. The most startling part was how natural it felt to be close to her. The accidental touches, the lingering glances, even the shared laughter over small mistakes, all of it wove an invisible thread between them. He felt a tension, yes, but also a sense of comfort and safety, as if her presence grounded him in a way no one else had. Internally, he wrestled with his own reactions. "She's my friend's mom," he reminded himself repeatedly, yet the awareness did little to dampen the warmth blooming inside him. He found himself craving more of these ordinary, intimate moments, the quiet closeness, the brush of her hand, the sound of her voice when she spoke softly. Each incident deepened the tension and the connection, making him acutely aware of what was unspoken but undeniable. Emotional beat for YouTube script. This part marks the deepening of emotional and physical intimacy without romance crossing boundaries. Focus on the sensory details, touch, proximity, warmth, subtle gestures, to create tension that feels real and YouTube safe. Highlight vulnerability on both sides, her quiet openness, his growing awareness and admiration. These accidental moments build emotional resonance, preparing the audience for heartfelt confessions in the next part. The connection between them had been building quietly for weeks, attention felt more than spoken. By now, he noticed the smallest gestures, the lingering glances, and the warmth of her presence with an intensity that both excited and unsettled him. But it wasn't just attraction anymore, it was curiosity, empathy, and the desire to understand her, who she was beyond the teasing smiles and graceful movements. That afternoon, he found himself lingering in the living room while she made tea, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting soft patterns across the floor. She joined him on the couch, settling beside him with a sigh, carrying a warmth that seemed to envelop the room. There was a quiet pause before she spoke, and in that silence, he realized the moment was delicate, intimate. "I haven't really talked about this much," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that caught him off guard. He glanced at her, noticing the subtle vulnerability in her eyes, the way they softened, the faint crease of concern on her forehead. She was opening a door, not with drama or confession, but with quiet honesty. She spoke of small regrets, the feeling of growing older while life seemed to move faster, and the challenges of balancing expectations with her own desires. He listened, captivated not just by her words, but by the subtle gestures, the way her fingers traced the rim of her cup, the soft rise and fall of her shoulders, the warmth radiating from her as she leaned closer. Each detail painted a picture of a woman he was only beginning to understand. He found himself sharing, too, not secrets or confessions of attraction, but small truths about himself. How he sometimes felt lost, how he admired her confidence and warmth, and how he was learning to notice the subtleties in people, just like he noticed her. They shared a quiet laugh over something trivial, and in that laughter, a bridge formed, connecting them in ways neither had anticipated. The tension between them was still there, electric and undeniable, but it had shifted. It was no longer just curiosity or forbidden attraction, it was a recognition of emotional intimacy, a bond forged through attention, empathy, and mutual understanding. He realized that attraction could be quiet, threaded through gestures, tone, and shared moments. It wasn't always about dramatic declarations, it was about the way someone made you feel noticed, safe, and seen. At one point, she brushed a stray strand of hair from his forehead, her fingers grazing his skin in a gesture that was both motherly and intimate. He felt a flutter in his chest, aware that their connection was deepening. There was no crossing of lines, only closeness, trust, and the acknowledgement of feelings neither of them had fully named yet. Emotional beat for YouTube script. This part is the emotional core of the slow burn. Focus on quiet, heartfelt dialogue and moments of shared vulnerability. Emphasize the narrator's growing understanding of her depth, her subtle openness, and the warmth that comes from being truly seen. Use sensory-rich details, touch, gaze, voice, to make the connection tangible. The audience should feel that the bond is emotional first, attraction second, setting the stage for tension to peak in the next chapter. The weeks of subtle glances, playful teasing, and quiet confessions had built to a point where the tension between them could no longer remain entirely unspoken. It was a late afternoon, the kind of soft golden light that seemed to make everything feel warmer and more intimate. They found themselves alone in the living room, the air heavy with unspoken words, yet calm, as if the world itself had slowed to let them exist in this small bubble together. He noticed the way she sat, poised yet relaxed, her hands folded lightly in her lap. Her gaze met his, steady but soft, inviting yet tentative. For a long moment, neither spoke. He could feel the warmth radiating from her presence, the subtle scent that had captivated him weeks ago still lingering, comforting and familiar. It was a moment suspended in time, fragile yet electric. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and thoughtful. "I've enjoyed these moments with you," she admitted, almost as if confessing to herself first. Her eyes softened, and a faint smile curved her lips, a smile that acknowledged everything they had shared without needing to spell it out. His heart thumped, aware of the delicate boundary between them, the years of experience and youth that separated them, yet irrelevant in this space where emotions had taken precedence. He leaned slightly closer, careful to respect the invisible line of propriety, and said quietly, "I've felt the same. I wasn't sure how to say it, or if I should." There was honesty in his tone, vulnerability that mirrored hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Their hands brushed as she reached for a cup of tea, lingering just slightly, and neither pulled away. The gesture, simple yet profound, carried the weight of unspoken feelings, admiration, longing, and a deep sense of connection. It was in that quiet touch that both of them acknowledged the bond they had formed, a bond that transcended the ordinary and left an indelible mark on their hearts. She tilted her head, eyes meeting his in a lingering gaze. "I didn't know this could happen," she whispered. "But I'm glad it did." The sincerity in her voice made his chest swell with emotion. He realized that this wasn't just attraction, it was understanding, care, and mutual respect, wrapped in a delicate tension that had finally found release. They shared a small, gentle gesture, a lingering hand on the arm, a brief brush of fingers, a quiet smile that spoke volumes. It was YouTube-safe, intimate without being explicit, a natural culmination of the slow burn that had been carefully nurtured over weeks. The resolution didn't need grand declarations or dramatic gestures, it was in the comfort, the warmth, and the acknowledgement of shared feelings. Emotional beat for YouTube script. This is the story's emotional closure. Focus on subtle physicality, touch, eye contact, small smiles, and dialogue that conveys vulnerability and honesty. Emphasize the depth of their connection and the fulfillment of their slow burn arc. The audience should feel contentment, emotional resolution, and the beauty of a connection that respects boundaries while honoring desire. Ending options. Together and secure, they hold hands, sitting close, smiling knowingly at the future they can explore together. Together but uncertain, they share a heartfelt embrace, acknowledging feelings but leaving the future open. Emotional resolution without romance. They part with a lingering handshake or hug, recognizing the bond but returning to separate paths. The golden light fades slowly, but the warmth of that shared moment lingers, leaving both forever changed.